Welcome back, guys. Today is the final part of the series and I hope you're very excited like I am. We're going to be putting everything we've learned so far together. The HTML, CSS, the JavaScript, the PHP and the MySQL, both the front end and the back end, and we're going to build a social network website. Now, we're going to be building this together. I'm going to show you what we're going to build in advance. Now, I'm going to switch over to the browser to show you what I'm talking about. And this is the social network website that we'll be building, and it's a minimal social network and it has a functionality of a register form, a login form. So we've got this register page right here, we've got a login page. Let me try to zoom in right here. Hopefully that's better. You can register, you can log in, and let's just say we register a new user. Just use TTTT for username and password. And we've got the profile page right here, and in the profile page you can edit the bio, and we might need to change the color of this because it's not very clear, but enter the bio right here. This is my bio, and you can also upload a picture to be your profile image, so we can do that right here, and I will update. And this will update the picture, and you see this alert right here telling us that the profile has been updated successfully, and this has been saved as well. So you can also go to the wall, which is the place basically just like a Facebook wall where you can post your updates and your users can check them out. As you can see, the wall right here has 2 entries from Michelle and John. Each one has their name, image, and the date, time of the post with the actual post right here. And I can add something like, this is my post, just random text, post it, and you'll see my picture, my name, TTTT, which is the user we signed up as, and then the post as well. And at the top you've got added post successfully. And then on the friends page you've got a list of friends, but there's no friends right now, so nothing is shown. You've got a list of members. You can choose to add a friend from one of these. So let's say we want to add John as a friend added successfully, and we get John added to the list up here. We add Michelle, and we add Tester as well. Now, as you can see, you can remove these friends. So we'll remove Tester, remove Michelle, and we'll keep John because we like John, right? Friend removed successfully, and that's basically it. It's quite minimal, but it will give you a good understanding of how to put all of these together, get the data persisted in a database, give you the ability to log in and log out. As you can see here, if you hover, you can log out as this user, and that's logged out. Again, you can log back in, and that will log us back in. So that's basically it. So we're going to jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create the folder structure. And to do that, we'll create a new folder. I've got mine here called Final Project. Let me try to zoom into this thing so that everything is a bit clearer. Might be too much. Let me zoom into the browser as well. And we're going to create a new folder, Final Project right here. And within it, we're going to create, first things first, we'll do index.php. So this will be the first page or the landing page that we'll use, right? And we want to add a few CSS files, or at least one CSS file and one JavaScript file. So we'll create a folder for that. And usually this folder will be called assets. So we'll name it assets. And inside of this folder, we'll create a file called we can call it index.css, right? But we're going to call it style.css this time. So style, am I typing? I'm not typing anything. Let me try that again. New file, style.css, and then we want to add a JS file, so we name it index.js, and this is basically our assets folder. Now, if you remember in the project or in the website, there was the ability to upload images as your profile picture. So we'll do that in a folder called uploads. So we'll create a folder called uploads, which will hold all the images that we're going to upload right here. And that is basically the main structure that we want to start with. We're going to have a folder for assets, a folder for uploads for the images, and we've got an index.php file, which is the landing page. Now, first thing we want to do is we want to create a new file called functions, and this will basically be reusable functions that we're going to use across the app, so we don't have to, or across the website, so we don't have to keep writing these functions over and over again. We can just import them in and reuse them. And you'll see that this makes sense as we go along. So functions.php, and first thing we want to do is we want to connect to the database, right? Just like we did in the previous part of this series when we looked at MySQL. Towards the end of it, we connected MySQL with PHP. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do open tags for PHP, close tags, and then we're going to add in our credentials for the MySQL. We've got database host, that will be local host for myself, and then we've got the user, that will be root for myself again, and then DB password is empty, and we'll add in an app name as well, and that will be social hub. Now make sure you use your credentials for this. Whatever you have set should go into here, and then we're going to do a try and catch to try and connect to the database. So try we're going to create a new variable called connection, which will hold the connection to the database. So connection equals to new PDO, and then we'll give it the values that we need right here, and these values will be a string with MySQL host equals to DB host, semicolon, and then we don't have a database name, so we're going to leave that out, do a comma, and add in the DB user and the DB pass. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to full screen this because we don't need the browser right now, and to do that I'm going to do this right here, and then semicolon, new line, connection. We want to set the attributes so that we see errors if there are any errors. Attribute, we do PDO, ERR mode, comma, PDO, ERR mode again, and this time we want to use exception. So basically we want to see the exceptions when there's errors. And then we're going to catch all of this if there is any errors. PDO exception, variable E, and in here we can echo out if there's any errors. So error occurred, we'll just use the file line, which is 11, and then we'll do E get message. Now I've commented this out, but we'll uncommented for now. But eventually when we start running this app and it's completed, we don't want to see these errors. So while we're developing, we'll keep it visible, but later on we'll comment it out. And moving on, this should have connected the database, right? And you can check by adding a echo statement right here, which will say connected successfully. And if it has connected successfully, you'll see that. But we've already done that in the previous video, so I'm not gonna go over that right now. Now, before we write the functions, there's a few variables that I want to create that will be used across the app. So I want to be able to see if the user is logged in or not. So I'm gonna have a variable called user logged in right here, and this will be set to the session. So once a user logs in or user registers, we're going to create a new session, which we've covered previously in the PHP tutorial. And this session will hold the username. So we're just going to check if this session exists in the session array. So session, and then we'll name this username. So we're checking if the username exists in the session. If it does, it'll be true or false. So either the user is logged in or the user isn't based on this session, and then we'll do username, and we'll use the variable we just created, user logged in session, and these are all keys that we will create once the user logs in, but for now we're just adding this in. And then we also want to add in a user ID, and again we will check if the user is logged in. If he is or she is, we'll do session, and then we'll name this member ID actually. Now basically what's happening here once again is we want to create a user logged in variable that will check if the user is logged in or not, and it will basically be saved here, and then we can use this variable, a global variable, across the whole app. So these are all global variables, and the way we're doing this is by checking if this username key exists within the session array. If it is set, that was an error there, then we'll set it to true, otherwise false, and then we use the same variable user logged in to check if the user is logged in. If they're not, then set username to an empty array. If they are logged in, we set the username variable to this and the user ID to this, so that later on in the app we can use these three variables across different pages to do different things or display different content. Hopefully that's clear. So just a quick comment: global variables to be used across the website. Now we want to create the functions that we will be using across the app. So the first function is we want to create a run query, which we'll basically use every time we want to create a new query to the database. So this function will take in a argument of the query that we want to run, and then it needs to access the connection variable that we created here. So we use the global keyword, if you remember from our PHP tutorial, and then we do query. Actually we instantiate it up here, and then we're actually going to put this in a try catch block where we'll set a new variable called result. Create a variable called results and set that to connection query, and then we give it the argument query. So this will just basically run our query, and then we want to set the result, set fetch mode to PDO fetch associate, which basically just sets the fetch mode that we use when we're looking through the data, and then we want to return a result. And then of course we're going to add the catch in case there are any errors, and then we do PDO exception, and then the variable that we want to use, and then we'll just echo error occurred, and then we'll add the variable and get message. Okay, so that's the first function that we'll be using across the app. The second function we want to use is something called, we can name it whatever we want, but we're going to call it a sanitize string, and this will take in the string we want to sanitize. So this is basically what we'll do every time we get a some sort of input from the user. We want to clean it out so that the user can't inject any code or inject anything malicious that will basically affect our database or our backend in any way. So to do that, we'll use the global connection again, and then we'll do variable equals to strip tag. So we'll strip any tags that are included in the input, and then we'll just save it to the input again. So the same variable equals to, we're basically just updating the var variable after we've done some work on it. So the first time we just strip the tags, second time we do HTML entities, and you can check what these do right here by just typing HTML entities, and then as you can see it says convert all applicable characters to HTML entities. And then we'll do var equals to strips slashes, I think, yeah. So this unquotes a quoted string, so it just removes quotes from a string basically. And we'll give it the var. And then lastly, we just want to return a connection with quotes, which will fix the quotations within the string. So it will either strip them or remove them so that you don't add any single quotes, for example, in the MySQL query. So here we'll give it var again, and that should be our string ready to be added to the database if we use this function. The other function we want to use is destroy session. So every time a user logs out, we want to destroy the session, right? So we'll do session, and then we'll set it to an empty array. And then we'll do if session ID not equal to, if it's not empty, or the cookie is set cookie array, we'll do cookie and then session name. And then here we wanna, what we want to do is we want to set cookie if this is true. So set cookie, and then we're basically just removing the cookie that already exists by doing this empty string. So this is the name, this is the key, this is the value, empty string, and then the time, which will be in the past, and this will apply to all of the subdomains. And then down here we'll do session underscore destroy. So just to run through this once more, we'll create a session, or we'll update the session array to be empty, to be an empty array. And then here we'll check if the session ID exists. Oops. If there's a session ID, that means the session has already started. If it's not empty, or if we have a cookie that is set, then that means there's a cookie that needs to be removed, and this will basically remove that cookie, and this will destroy the session. So this will basically help us to log out a user, right? Now the last function that we want to use is the function to create tables. So this will help us set up the database. And here we will run query. So this is the function we created up here, run query. Now we're using it down here, and we're going to give it the query as the argument. We're going to do create table if not exists, so create it only if it doesn't exist, and then we'll give it a name and the query, and these will be arguments here. So name, query will be added as arguments, and semicolon, and then we should just output some text to the browser to let it know what's happening. So we'll do name, table name created or already exists, new line. So the creates table function will take the name of the table in the query, and it will run this function, run query, and it will create the table if it doesn't exist using the name and query that we passed in. And then it will output table name created or already exists. So these are the functions that we want to use across the app. So this is looking good so far. Let me see if anything else is required. I think that's it for now. And we're going to start using these functions that we've created in a new file called setup.php. So this will be the file that will contain all of our database setup code. All right. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to create the tables. Now for MySQL, you can use something called phpMyAdmin if you're using XAMPP. So if you've set up XAMPP and you've got MySQL running on XAMPP, you can go to the browser, go to localhost, and then / and then examp, and then you'll see at the bottom left it says something called phpMyAdmin, and I'll link an image so that you can see what I'm talking about right now. And you'll see at the bottom left you have phpMyAdmin, so just click on that. And if you're not using examp, then you might want to use something like, depending on the platform that you're running, whether you're running Windows or Mac. For Mac, I would recommend using something like SQL Pro, which is what I'm using over here, as you can see. And this will basically allow you to connect to a database, or allow you to connect to a MySQL server, which will contain multiple databases. So here I've got localhost, double click on that, and as you can see, I've got all the databases right here. So I would recommend that you use something like this. This is SQL Pro, and you'll find the equivalent of SQL Pro on Windows. So just do a quick Google search. But remember, if you're using examp, you don't need to use this. You can just go to phpMyAdmin, which does the same thing. Now within setup.php, we're actually going to create a HTML template, right? So we'll keep this out of the way, the PHP tags, and we're going to create a HTML template. And we'll just name this social hub setup. And in the body, we'll just write, we'll give it HR tag, and we'll say setting up tables. And then down here, we'll actually bring the tags back up. And here we will add all the code to create the different tables that we want. So firstly, we need to use this function right here. And the way we could do that is by bringing the functions.php into this. So we'll do require, and then we'll do functions.php. And now we have access to all of these functions within the functions script, right? Now we're going to create a table, and this will be our first table, and it will be called members. And this will basically hold all of the members that exist within the social platform. And if you remember this part from our MySQL tutorial earlier, here you would give it the different columns that you want within the table. So we want an ID column of type int, not null, auto increment, primary key, and then we'll do name, and that needs to be within the double quotes. So we'll do name, then we'll do varchar, and then we'll do 20, and then we'll do unique. So we want the name to be unique of every user, and I spelled unique wrong. Unique, and we want to give them a password of varchar 16 characters, and then we want to index the name so that we can search through by name later on. And then we close this off down here, and that's our first table. Now I'm going to go ahead and write the rest of the tables and then go through them one by one, just so that you don't have to watch me type all of them out, but feel free to pause and then write them all out yourself. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. I've created a second table called friends, and this will contain all of the friends that a user has. And as you can see here, we've got two columns, member ID and friend ID, and they're both set to int and they're not null. And one of them will hold the user's ID, the other one will hold their friend's ID. And we can basically find every user's friends using this table. So this is like an intermediate to a many-to-many relationship, if you remember from our previous video. And we have the index for member ID and index for friend ID, because we want to search by both of them. And then we want to do unique key friends, member ID and friend ID. So we've basically just done a unique key using member ID and friend ID, which means these two have to be unique each time. So you can't have member ID and friend ID being the same number over and over again. It's just a one combination. For example, if you have a member ID of 2 and a friend ID of 3, then you won't see that combination again. It was just the one row that will have this combination, and we've set that unique key to the name of friends. The next table is called profiles. It has a member ID, a bio, and an image URL. This is quite self-explanatory. Member ID is the ID of the member that this profile belongs to. Bio is the text that we're going to add to basically the bio of the user. And then the image URL is where we'll save the file inside uploads and just have the link ready and saved in a database. The member ID basically signifies a one-to-one relationship where one member will have one profile will belong to one member. And then we have the wall table, which will be the wall where all the posts are contained. And you've got the ID column, which is an integer. We've got the integer as not null, auto increment, primary key. We've got post as a text, and that's not null. We've got member ID again, and it's integer, and it's not null. And then we have a DT for timestamp, which will tell us the time and date the post was created. And again, this is a one-to-many relationship because one member can have many wall posts, right? But it's created the same way as profiles using the member ID. Down here, we actually used a different function now. So these are all the tables right here, just 4 different tables. And down here, we use the run query, which will just basically run a query on the database. And here we're inserting different new members. So we created a member called tester and gave it the password tester, John, and we gave it the password John, Michelle, Connor, etc. So these are just different users that we've auto-created or will be auto-creating. And then for the posts, we created 2 posts. One that says, hi guys, my name is John and I'm new to this hub, and that's by member ID 2. So member ID 2 will be John, because this is 1 and this is 2. The second post by member ID 3, so this is by Michelle, and these posts will be added into the wall page or the home page. And lastly, we created 3 different profiles. So because John and Michelle have already created different posts, or they've created their first posts, that means they need to have a profile. So I've created a profile for tester, I've created a profile for John, and I've created a profile for Michelle. So this is the member ID base. So insert into profiles, member ID 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we're gonna run that and see what we get. If I go to the browser right here, and then we only need one browser, so we'll just expand this and we'll go to setup.php, and it says call to undefined function create table. So we're missing the function. We named it as create tables. We only want it to be create table because we're only creating one table at a time. So now if I refresh, it says invalid catalog name, no database selected. We needed to select a database. So I'm going to leave all these errors in so that you can see how I'm fixing these errors as they come up. So down here, just before the function, we're going to actually create the database. So we're going to create the database right here, create database if not exists, and then the name of the database, so we'll name it social hub. And then we need to use the database. So let me just write some comments here. Create db if doesn't exist, and then use the social hub db that we just created, use and run query, use social hub. So this will allow us to actually start using the database so that we can start creating the tables. Okay, so back to setup. This should work now. If we go to the browser and try to refresh, you'll see that it's it says created, table members created already exists, table friends created already exists, profiles and wall created already exists. So we go to our, if we go to our database and just refresh, you'll see that now we have all these tables, and for the members we've got 10 members. For the wall we have 2 posts, and profiles we have 3 different profiles with no bio or image. Friends table is empty. That's looking good. I don't know if I can zoom into this, doesn't seem like it, but that's fine. So that's done. So now we've done setup and functions. Now we want to get into our index, which is the landing page. So if we remove these 2 files for now and look at our index. For the index, we want to start with actually calling, basically the index is the home page. So what we want to do here is for every page on the website, we want to have a header and a footer, the top part and the bottom part, because these will always be consistent. It's only the center of the page that will change. So the content in the center of the page will change depending on the page. But at the top we'll have the nav bar, which will always be there, and at the footer we'll have whatever we want, which will always be there. So we'll just do require at the top here, if I can spell, and then header.php. And we haven't created this yet, but we'll do this next. And then at the bottom we'll do the same thing and we'll add the footer. So if I just maybe create a different tag right here and do require and then footer, and in between here we'll have HTML possibly. So this is why I've created 2 different PHP tags, opening and closing, because in the middle I want to write HTML, right? So we'll save this and then we'll create these 2 files, header.php and then footer.php. Right, now I could add some content into this to show you what it looks like, and we're going to do that very quickly. h3, sorry, and then we'll do header, and then we'll do footer, same thing but change the text to footer. Save both of them, and then we'll have a look in the browser to see what it looks like. But make sure you remove the setup and we go to index.php, right? So you go to index.php, and as you can see, you've got the header and the footer right there. That's good. Now, if we go to the footer, because the footer will contain less code, or maybe we'll start with the header for it to make more sense, because the header is the starting point of the program. And here we will have the HTML document that we'll be using for the actual website. So create the HTML document, and then we'll name this, what shall we name it? Let's name it Social Hub. And at the top of this HTML, we want to start a new session. So we'll create a PHP tag, and here we'll do session start, which will create a new session. And then we want to use we want to include the functions into our website so that we can use the functions file or the functions within the functions file anywhere on the website. So we'll include it here. So we'll do require again functions, because this file is very important. And now we have access to all of these functions within the index and the header, and also the footer, basically the entire website. So then we want to link our CSS file, and the CSS file usually gets linked within the head tag. So right here we'll do link href, and then we'll give it this assets /style.css, close that off and just give it the rel style sheet, and that should bring in the style sheet that we created in the assets folder right here. And then we also want to add in something called I think we're adding font awesome, which is basically for the icons that we'll be using. So if we go and get if we just do a Google search for font awesome, and then CDN. Go to the first one and then just copy this link. I'll keep these links in the description, but just try to Google them, I'm sure you'll come across them. And then we'll just paste this into here, right above where we include our own CSS, and then save that. That's looking good. You can always check the browser to see if that's been pulled in, and you can check that by going to the console, and then you go to sources, and here you'll see them. So if I refresh this, as you can see, we're pulling something from CDN, open it up, and you see font awesome is being pulled. Now the next part is within the body right here, we want to start off our website, right? So here we'll create, at the very top we'll always have a navbar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a navbar file. So I'm going to do PHP tags and then require and then navbar, because this navbar will always be the same on every page. So we're adding it here, and then this part right here, we're going to remove the closing body tag and the closing HTML tag. We're going to add to the footer, because that's where the website ends and not here. So we basically kept this HTML opened until it gets to the footer, and then it gets closed, just like that. So within the footer, we want to add the JavaScript that we'll be using. So here we'll do script just inside the body tag. We'll do script at the very end, source, and then we'll do assets index.js, and that will be our script. Close it off, and that's good. Now there's one more script that we want to add, which is jQuery, which is a JavaScript library that simplifies the use of JavaScript when interacting with websites or interacting with the DOM. So we'll bring that in by just searching for jQuery CDN again, and then clicking the second one this time, and then just copying the script tag right here, pasting it above the JavaScript that we will be adding, because we want to use it in our JavaScript possibly. So it needs to load first before we can use it. So that goes first, and then our JavaScript file, and then the closing tag. So make sure these are the last two things before the closing body and HTML tag. So that's looking good. Maybe push them forward a bit and push this forward a bit more. There we go, just to align everything as if the whole HTML file was here. So that's the footer, and I don't think we will need to touch the footer again. And the header, I think that's all for the header right now. We need to create the navbar file. So we go ahead and do navbar.php, and as you can see, we're already creating a lot of files, but this will give our project a bit of structure down the line, so that you know where everything is, because we could have added everything in one file, but it would have been very messy very quickly. But as you can see now, we have different files, and based on the name we can tell what each file is doing. So we close off header, and we can keep index open, but we're going to work on navbar right now. So for the navbar, we basically want to add a navbar, and we're going to customize this from scratch. I was thinking of using a CSS library, but then I thought, what's the point? We won't be able to actually utilize the skills that we've learnt ourselves. So with CSS libraries, you can get HTML content that has already been styled for you, but we don't want to do that. We want to style them from scratch. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to create a div, and we're going to call it navbar. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to write all the HTML first, and then I'll do the CSS so that we can style it later on. So we'll do the whole project just HTML, and then we're going to start to style it with CSS at the end. So we'll do navbar, close that div, and then inside here we want to basically have, and I'm going to pull up the other website so that we can get a good idea of how things look. The other website was, I believe it was, if you just bear with me 1 second, right here. Okay, so as you see here at the top, at the top left we have something like a logo, but we've just got text, and then we've got register and login on the right. So to do that, we'll add a div class logo, and then here we'll add a link, a href, and this link will just direct you or redirect you to the same page, which is, or the home page, not the same page, but the landing page. So we'll do, our logo will just be text, social hub, and then we'll close off the div just like that, indent it. And then we want to display the register and login if the user is not logged in. So what we're going to do is we create PHP tags, and we're going to check if user is logged in. And remember, where is this variable coming from? Right, so we've done if user is logged in, and then we've done open brackets, and then we close the PHP tag so that we can write some HTML here, but make sure that you close the brackets down here. So we'll do PHP tag, close brackets, and close the PHP tag. And now anything you write here will only appear if the user is logged in. And remember, this user logged in, or this user is logged in variable is coming from the functions file where we created this variable right here, right? So this will be true or false based on this condition. Okay, now if the user is not logged in, we'll do else, open curly bracket, and then again we'll do another PHP open close tag, and here we'll do close curly bracket. So as you can see, we've just structured this to run some code that's in here if the user is logged in, otherwise run this code if the user is not logged in. So what do we want to run if the user is logged in or if the user is not logged in? Well, if the user is not logged in, we want to add div class, we'll call this side links. So these will be on the side, on the right side. And then we close this div. And inside of here, we'll give it a href. We'll give it a class of nav link, and then the href or the link will be register.php, and then the name or the text will be register, and we'll copy paste this, change the text to login, and then login.php. So we don't have these files created yet, but as you can tell, this page or this file will be for the register, and the login will be for the login. And these links or this side link div will only appear if the user is not logged in, right? If the user is logged in, what do we want to see? Well, we want to see a different set of links, right? So if the user logs in, we want to see, let me register actually. If I go to submit, if the user is logged in, we want to see profile, wall, friends, right? So that's what we want to see. Now to do that, we're going to create a UL. And we could have done that down here, to be honest, but we've stuck with div here, and here we're doing UL just to change things up a bit. We'll do UL class nav links, and here we'll do li class nav item this time, and then we'll give it a href, a link with a href to profile. So the first one was profile, and close this off to profile, close the a tag and the li tag, copy and paste that. Second one will be the home page, which will be the wall. So the home page doesn't need a .php. And then the last one, which will be friends.php, and the text will be friends. That's looking good. And then we also have something else. We have this that appears on the right side. So that's the image right here. And then if you hover over the image, you get this drop down right here, or this box or container which has the name of the user and then the logout with an icon. So to do that, we'll do div class user avatar container, and then we'll do div class user avatar, and then inside of this, let me close it off first so that we don't forget. Inside here we'll do a tag or an a tag with a href to the profile. So if they click on the image, it takes them to the profile, and the text will basically be the image itself. So we'll do image source, and here the source will be coming from the database, right? But we want to simplify things, so if I just check functions, I think when we log in we'll set the image there to a certain variable, and then we'll use that variable. So for now we'll just set it to echo, so it's a PHP tag echo, and then the variable name that we will use later on. Right now this variable doesn't exist, image source, but we will create this. So this will basically be the image URL that we want to get the image from. And we want to add a avatar drop down, which will be the drop down right here. So we'll do outside the user avatar container, we'll do dv class avatar drop down, and then we close this div, create a new div within that called username, and close that div again, and just make sure the indentation is okay. Create a PHP tag with echo username, so this will output the username that you see right here at the top. And as you can see, we also have the logout. So to output that, we'll add another class or div class logout, and this div will contain the icon and the text. So for the icon, we'll go to font items. So this is the font items package that we linked, font items icons. Just Google that, go to the first link, and then search for logout, and then you can use any of these. I'm going to use this one right here from bracket. So just open it up and then copy code, and then you can just paste that here. And we want to add and ns or nbsp slide semicolon. This is basically just a space, so we're adding a space between the text and the icon, and here we'll add the text and an a tag which will link to the logout page, and the text will be logout, of course. So this will give us, let's close this, this will give us this right here. Again, this page doesn't exist at the minute, but we will be creating that. Next, we want to move on from this part right here, and we're going to go just below that, and here we're going to add the navigation bar for the mobile view. So if you try to minimize the screen, well, let's just open the console, try to use this device up here and just minimize the screen to, for example, anything below 800. Can I zoom into this? It's very zoomed out. Let's see if I can zoom in somehow. I think you can zoom in with this. There we go. Now, as you can see, if we go above 800, we get this nav bar. If we go below 800, we get this customized nav bar for mobile view or tablet. And as you can see right here, we've got this nav bar. If you click on it, it shows you the same menu but in a drop down list. So we want to add this in. so that we are taking into account the mobile views and the tablet views as well. And this is basically just the responsive design that we'll be using. So to do that, we're going to create first of all the icon that appears up here, and we'll add this in a div with a class called menu icon, and we're going to give it the icon that we're going to use. So if we go back to Font Awesome icons, and then we look for menu, we should be able to see the menu up here. And as you can see, we've got many menus. I'm going to use the first one, bars, copy it, and then paste it into here, close the div, and that should be that. Next, we want to actually create the menu, the drop down menu. So we'll do class mobile menu right here, and then we close this div, and inside of it we'll create our items. So we'll create, actually we're going to create list items in here. So this needs to be a UL, and here we'll do li, and then class mitem for mobile item or menu item, and in here we'll do an a tag that links to the home page, which will be called wall. Close this li, copy paste it, and the next one will be friends, and then the next one will be profile. So we'll do friends, and then friends.php, copy paste again, and then profile.php. So this will appear if we are logged in, right? And if we're not logged in, we want the register and login to appear. So ideally when we're not logged in, we shouldn't see this. So what we should do is actually do this: PHP if user is logged in, open brackets, close the PHP tag, indent this stuff, open another PHP tag, close the curly brackets, close the PHP tag, close the PHP tag, and then just add an else, open curly bracket, and then another PHP tag which closes the curly bracket. And here we can add what we want if the user is not logged in. So if they're logged in, we'll add this plus one more thing, which is the logout. So we'll add another li class mitem, and then we will log out, link it to a logout page, and the text will simply be logout. And in the else, we will add the register and login. So class mitem, can I just copy and paste instead of writing the whole thing? We'll do register first, and then here we'll do register, and then we'll paste the other one. We'll do login, and then login right here. So that's looking good. So this, again, this will appear if it's logged in, if the user is logged in, and this will appear if the user is not logged in. That's quite straightforward, and that's all we need right here, I think, for the nav bar for now. The only thing that's missing is this variable right here. So this doesn't exist. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend this. We're just going to do hit enter a few lines after this curly bracket so that we can write some more PHP code here. And here we're going to create this variable, and this variable is going to equal to, we're going to check if something in the session is called, let's just check session, if I can spell correctly, session user image. So we're going to check if the session has something called, or a key called user image. If it does, we're going to set the link to uploads, because that's the name of the file, right, or the name of the folder, uploads, and then we're gonna give it this value right here, which will hold the image URL. And to do that, we're just going to concatenate the text. And if you remember, to concatenate strings, you can do dot and then paste this in, and that will basically be the link. Otherwise, if we don't have a link, if this doesn't exist, we're going to use a default image, which we can get from the browser. If we go to lorem image, we've used this previously, and then go to the first link. Whoops, lorem image, and then go to the first link. You can basically just take this and then paste it right here, and this will be our default image if the user doesn't have an image set. And then we just need to close everything off with a semicolon, or end everything, and that will basically give us the image source. So that's fine now. I think our navbar is complete. We could try to look at it, but you might see random errors because things are not working yet. Like here, for example, you have the username that hasn't been set. That usually gets set after user has logged in. If I refresh this, as you can see, we've got a few things appearing, but it's all looking ugly. Like here it says user is logged in, does not exist, undefined variable. That's because we're going to set this after we log in, right? So if we go to functions, we've got user logged in right here, and then in the navbar we actually spelt it wrong. So we've used user logged in, and here we've done user is logged in. So I need to change all of this to user logged in. Save that and refresh, and you'll see that has actually taken the error away, because in functions we're creating this user logged in and we're setting it to true and false, so it's always defined, so the error shouldn't be there. But as you can see, this is still very ugly. We will fix that, but for now we're sticking to all the HTML. So we're going to create all the HTML to all the pages, and then we're going to add the CSS to make it look prettier. We can close the functions.php. I believe we could close the navbar.php as well for now, and then we can go back to our index.php. Now in the index.php, what we're going to do is we're going to add something else to it, and that will be the alerts. So if you remember, up here we had the navbar, and then right under the navbar you will have this appearing anytime there was an alert. So we need to add this at the top as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this right underneath the header.php, and this will be added to the different pages that we're going to create. So here in the home page, we want this to appear as well, because the home page is the wall posts, and every time someone adds a wall post, a new wall post, you want the alert to appear. So we're adding it here in the home page, which is the index.php. We're adding alert.php, and we're going to go ahead and create that. And if you remember previously as well, in the navbar we created we used the different files here: friends, profile, logout, register, and login. Let's just create these files right now. So we've got friends.php, we've got profile.php, we've got register.php, we've got login.php, and we have logout.php. So these are all the links that we've linked in here. We've created all the files now, so that's looking good. Now let's go one by one and go back to our alert page, because that alert page is going to be on all the pages mainly. So for the alert, it's quite straightforward, to be honest. We're going to check if there's an alert, and if there is, we're going to output the data. So to do that, we'll create a PHP tag up here, and within this tag we're going to check if the session variable is there. So it's set, and then session alert. So basically every time there's an alert, we'll create this key within the session. So we're checking if this key exists. and then we want to add a and empty, or is not empty, alert again. So what we're doing is we're checking if this key exists and it's not empty, right? And if that is true, we'll just open curly brackets and keep that opened, and down here we'll close it off and close the PHP tag, and anything inside these two curly brackets will appear if there's an alert. So we want to add a div class here of alert and style, which will be some inline CSS, and this is basically going to change the color of the background, because if it's an error we want it to be a different color to if it's a successful alert. If it's successful, we want it to be green. If it's unsuccessful, we want it to be more like red, so that the user can differentiate between an error and a successful alert. So we'll do background color. In here we'll give it, we'll have to use the PHP tag, open and close, and here we'll do echo session alert, and then alert will be an array, and inside of it we'll do status. So we're accessing the alert array within the session array, and that alert array has a key of status, and that status will either be 200 or 500. 200 will be successful, so if it's equal to 200 that means it's successful. You want the color to be green. Otherwise, if it's not 200, that means it's unsuccessful, which will mean it should be red. So once again, we're creating a PHP tag that inside of it will echo this value, which is something we're going to set later on. And this will basically check if this value is equal to 200, that means this will run. If it's not 200, this will run. And this will basically set the value to either green or red for the background of this div based on the data. And I think we need to close off the style attribute right here, and then the div, and then we close off the div down here. And now we just need to add the content of the div. So we'll have a message inside the alert, which will be in another div, and we'll write a class of alert message here. Open and close tag. Inside this alert message, we want to alert the actual message. So this, we'll use the same array that we used earlier in alert. And inside of this, we'll have another key of message. So this session alert will be associative array, and inside of it, we'll have different keys like message and status. This message will be the message that we want to output to the user, as you saw right here. So this would be the message, profile update successfully, and then the color or the status would be based on the color, or the color would be based on the status. So that's that. And then we just want to, after we close the curly brackets, we want to reset this session or reset the alert within the session to an empty array, so that after you see this and then you refresh, it should be gone. You shouldn't see it again. So that's what this does right here. It just removes the data once you refresh, or after it appears one time, it gets removed from the session, because the session usually stays until the browser is closed, but we don't want that same message to keep appearing until the browser is closed. So after this message has appeared, it automatically clears the array so that the message is gone. Hopefully that's clear. So that's the alert.php. I think we can leave that for now. I'm just gonna write a comment here to say remove message. after it's appeared. And we'll close this for now. And I think we can go back to our index, but before that, so this should be working right now. These two should be fine. And then before we move on with the index, we'll start doing the register and the login, because these are important parts of this program. So we'll do a register.php and then the login, and then we move on to logout, and then we'll go back to the index and work our way from there. So starting with the register, because the user needs to register before they can start working on the app. We don't need login, we want register. We'll do open close tag right here. And then within this, we're gonna start by adding the header, because remember, register.php is a new page and we need to add in the header to that, because the header is always the same on all pages. We can even add the footer as well. So we'll go ahead and add the footer. And that should do for now. Next up, we want to add the HTML. So there's going to be two parts to this register.php. First the HTML and then the PHP at the top. So we'll add the HTML. And that will basically be a div with a class of container. And we'll also give it a class called register. Close it off, and then we'll do div class card. So this will be a card within this. So if I just show you this right here, let me log out. I can't actually log out unless I move this right here, log out, and then if I go to register, you'll see that this right here is the card that we're building. So the card, if I close the div or the div, the card will have a class header. We'll do div class card header, which is this header right here, register, and then div, and then it has a body. So card body will be this entire form, username and password. So here we'll create a form, right? We'll do form class. Actually, we don't need to give it a class for now. We'll do method equals post, which is the method the data will be sent to the backend. And then the action is where you want the data to be submitted. So basically what that means is that every time you hit submit, the data that you entered here gets submitted somewhere. And this action tells it where it should be submitted. So we're basically submitting it to the same file that we're currently in, register.php. You can create a different file that will handle this, but we're just trying to keep it as simple as we can. We're going to submit the same data to this file. So that's why we're going to add some PHP code up here to handle that data that's being submitted. For now, all you need to know is action means the data will be submitted to this file right here that you give it, or this path. Okay, and this is the method it's being submitted by, the post. Let's close off this form before we forget and indent it. And then inside here we'll create a div of class form group. And inside here we'll add a label and an input field. So label will be username, and then the input field will be text or type text, and then the class can be form control, the ID can be username, and the name can be username, and then the placeholder will be enter username. So the type is the type of input, the class is just the class as you know, the ID is the ID as you know. These are used to select this input either from CSS or JavaScript. And then the name is basically how the backend will see this data. using this name, which will be username. And then the placeholder is basically what you see if you don't type anything. Hopefully that's clear. Moving on, we want this to be required, so you can't submit this form unless you fill this field in. So that's good. And then we want another one very similar to this, but this time it will be for the password. So you copy and paste, change this to password, and change the type to password. Change the ID and name and placeholder to password as well. This will be required again, and we'll just add one more input field called, we'll set this to type hidden, so we don't want to see this, it will just be there in the background, and then we'll do name register, right? And then we'll do button type submit class. The class will be button primary for now, even though we might not need that, but we'll set it as that for now. And then button, close the tag, and I think that's it. Let's just see what we have. If we go to the register.php, as you can see, we have the form right here, and if I try to submit it, you see that it just refreshes the same page, so it's being submitted to the same page. Now, what if you wanted to see the data that is being submitted? Well, first of all, I'm going to clear up all these extra spaces, just remove them, and there we go. Remove this as well, and then we want to see the data that is being submitted. So up here we'll create a PHP tag, and we'll do a var dump of the post. So remember, the post variable, the global variable post, is something we covered in the PHP tutorial. If you haven't checked that, please do, because it will make things a lot easier for you. This basically contains all the data that is being sent to this post method right here. So any form data is being submitted, it will go through to this array. So if we just open this up again, and you'll see the array is currently empty. If you add this and add that, just random text, and then submit, you'll see that username now contains this data and the password contains this data. And then we have register. Register is the hidden input right here, name register, and you can see the value is empty. So name is the key, and then the value is what you give it in here. So just remember that. The name of the input, right here we have username and password. That is the key by which you'll see the data added. So basically this is an associative array. The key will be the name, and the value will be this part right here. The value will be the value. So using this, then we can start to actually save the data and add it to the database, right? So first thing we want to do is we want to check if the data has been submitted, because we don't want to actually start doing anything until the data is submitted. So we do is set post register and is set post username and is set post what was the last one? Password. Now, to be honest with you, you don't need all of this. The reason why I added this input register, this hidden input named register, is so that we can just check register. So we can actually remove all of this, but what this does is it checks if this exists and this exists and this exists, then it continues. We can keep it as it is, or we can just have this right here. They both will work fine. So we'll just use this for now, and in here this will basically say that this has been submitted, and if it has been submitted, it will run this code. So inside here we want to check if the username and password are not empty. So if the username and password are empty, we don't want to continue. So we'll do username not equal to empty string, and post password not equal to empty again. And if that is true, then run the code in here. So first thing we want to do, if we got into this point, we want to clean the user input, and the way we do that is by using our function that we imported from header. Inside of header, where's header, I can't see header, whoops. Inside of header you have the functions, so this will call that function that we used earlier, which was sanitize string, and here we will just pull the string that the user added, which is username and password, and we'll save it to a variable called username, or maybe uname for short, and then copy paste that. We'll do password as well. So this just takes the username and the password that the user has entered, cleans the input, and saves it to these variables, so that we can then run the query, and the query will be just to insert the data into the database, basically creating a new user. So insert into members, insert into members, and then we want to add the name and password, values, parentheses, and then the uname variable, and then the pass variable, just like that. And then we close it off. And I'm just going to add a comment here to say register query. So this is the register query to take the data from the user input and create the row within the database. So this will basically just create a new user in the database under the table members. And then the reason why we've created the variable called result is because we want to check if this was successful or not. If it's successful, we want to tell the user that it was successful and do some actions based on that. If it was unsuccessful, we also want to inform the user that it was unsuccessful and just perform some actions again based on that. So to do that, we'll do if result is true, we do something, otherwise we do something else. Before this, we'll just add the session alert. So session and then the key alert, and this will be an array like we said earlier, and this array will have two different keys, status and also message, and these keys will have two different values. For status we'll have 200 or 500 based on the result, so we need to check if the result is true, we do 200, otherwise we do 500. So this is basically a condition. If this is true, status will be 200, else it will be 500. And then the message will be based on the result again, so we'll do result, check if it's true, registered successfully, and if it's false, error occurred while registering, and you can't have semicolon in the array. And let me just correct this right here. I think that's spelled correctly. Maybe it has two R's, occurred, I'm not too sure. We'll keep it as that, but basically what this does is sets the alert, and as you can see in the alert.php right here, we check if this is set and it's not empty. If it's set, then we output something. So this is what this does, it sets it and then it will output based on this. And here we want to perform some actions based on the fact that the user has been created. So if the user is created, we want to get the user that was just created, so we'll do another one query, and this time in this one query we're gonna select everything from members, where in M, we'll just add M for members right here, where m.name is equal to uname, and then we'll do join profiles p on p.member id equal .mid, and then we'll close this off down here with a semicolon. So this basically selects members where the name is equal to this, and then it joins the profiles if it has a profile with the member ID equal to MID. So that's that. Although when we first create a user, we're not going to have a profile for them, so this is quite pointless. So we'll just remove this for now, because when we first register a user, they don't have a profile. We have to create that profile for them. So we'll keep it as this for now. Just selecting the data of the user is what we're doing here. We're getting the user, and then we'll do user equals to get user fetch. So this is basically actually getting the data right here and saving it to this. So now you have an array with the user right here, and inside of this user you'll have things like the, if I go to the database, you'll have things like the ID, the name, and the pass. So this is where we set the session. The member ID will equal to the user ID, and then the username can also equal to the name or the uname. They're both the same. And then the session user image, which is the new variable that we're creating, will equal to user image URL. So this is coming from the profile, but again we don't have the profile here. So for now what we'll do is we will set this as an empty string, right? So just like that, and we'll keep this commented out for now, and we'll revisit this later. And then once we have this data, we want to on login, do we want to direct them to the login page or the home page or the profile page? I think we will direct them to the profile page, because you've just registered and you might want to update your profile, add a bio, add an image, etc. So this is how you would redirect someone to a new page using the header function, which comes with PHP, predefined function, and you just give it the location, colon, and then the location that you want to push the user to. So here we're pushing the user to profile.php. So that's that. We save this, and this basically is now complete. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the alert down here. We might need to change it later on if things don't work as planned, but we'll do short alerts after they've been set. So the alerts were set up here, and down here we want to add the alerts, alert.php. Okay, so again, just to run through this very quickly, we've got the header.php that's been pulled in, which pulls in the functions, the navbar, the HTML, all of that. And then we have some PHP code that we'll go through in a second. But here we have the template for our register.php, which is what we see right here. As you can see, we have the template right here. It doesn't have any styling, but this is the HTML, the register, the form, the inputs, the username input, the password input, the hidden input, and the button. And at the bottom we have the footer, and the PHP code is basically to handle the data or the form that's being submitted with the data. So the form checks or the PHP code checks if the form has something called register and it's set. If it is set, it checks if the username and the password are not empty. If it's not empty, it goes ahead and cleans the username and the password using the functions we used in function.php. And then it runs the query where it inserts the new member into the database, the table members, and it creates an alert, and it goes ahead and gets the new user and sets the function, or this session, sorry. It sets the session for the new user, and then it directs it to profile.php. So we'll see this in action shortly, but we're going to go ahead with login PHP and logout PHP now. So moving on to login.php. So next up we have the login.php file. And this is going to be very similar to the register file, or register.php, except that the content is going to be different. But we're going to follow the same concept, where we'll have the template, the HTML, and then above that we'll have the PHP code that is going to handle the form submission. So we'll start off by adding the require header as usual, .php, and at the bottom we'll do require footer .php, close these off with semicolons, and then we'll create the HTML first, and then we will go ahead and what I can do here is just take the code from the register. So I'm gonna actually do that, copy the HTML from here and paste it into the login page and change any register words to login. So change all of these to login, right? So login, we'll capitalize this login, login.php here, and login at the bottom. So make sure you've done all of that. We don't want to have the word register anywhere here. Instead, we want it to be login. The only difference is that we're going to add some text here, and we'll name it, actually we'll just do a small tag, opening closing tag, and inside of it we'll do, this will be the name, this will be the name others see you as. Just some description as to what this username is. It's unnecessary, but we've just added there. That's really the difference between login and register in terms of the form. So if we save this and then just have a look on the browser, and if we navigate to login, as you can see here, we've got the same register and login form look exactly the same except for this. Now we want to just handle the data. So up here we'll create a PHP tag, and this will basically handle the form submission, and it will be similar to the previous PHP that we added here. So instead of doing post register, we'll do post login, and then we'll check if the login and the username and password is empty or not. So we can take and copy this up to here, or even all of this. We can copy and paste this into here, but I'm gonna try and get you into the habit of writing code. So we'll do if is set post underscore or underscore post login, which will basically check for this login if it exists or it's been submitted, and then inside of that we'll do if post username not equal to empty, and we have post password as well not equal to empty. Then we want to do something, right? So here we'll just run the same code we ran previously. We'll do uname equals to sanitize string, and then we'll give it the post username, just like that, copy and paste it and change that to password. So we'll do pass here and then password here. And we'll just leave a comment here to say clear up or clear user input. And then below that, we're actually going to run the query. So we'll do result. We're saving the query that ran inside this result variable. So run query. And then inside here, we want to select to see if the user exists. So we'll do select m.id, m.name, and then we'll also get the image URL from the profile table if the user does exist. So from members, M for short, join profiles, so we're joining the profile table, P for short, on p.member id equals to m.id, where m.name equals to uname, and m.pass equals to pass, right? So we're selecting the ID, the name, and the image URL from members M, and we're doing a join profiles table on p.memberid and equal to m.id, on or where name is equal to the username and password right here. So this will give us the user if the user exists. So we'll save this in a user exists variable and we'll check if there is some data. So this will give us the row count, and if the row count is greater than 0, that means we have found a user. And then as usual, we'll create the session alert right here. So we'll do session alert equals to again, we'll do status and message as the keys. For status, we'll check if user exists. If it does, we'll do 200. If it doesn't, we'll do 500. And then message, user exists, again, check user exists. If it's true, the message will be nothing basically, because we're going to redirect them to the home page. And if it's false, we'll do please check your credentials and try again. So that's good. And then if the user does exist, we want to set all the session variables, right? But first we want to get the user. So we'll do user or result fetch, which will actually get the user right here from this. And then we can do session and we'll do member ID equals to user ID. Copy this 3 times and we're going to add username, and that will be the name of the user. And then the image, we'll save that under user image, and that will be the image URL. So if you remember in the functions page, we had used the session username and the session member ID. These are basically being set here. So once you log in, we will set the member ID and the username, and these will be set in these variables if they do exist, right? So that's the use of that. And then we'll do header. Now that the user has logged in successfully, we will redirect them to the home page just by this slash right here. And with that done, we can add in the alert. So we'll do require alert just like before. And that is the login page. I think that's it for now. And we can try to test it out. So if we go back to our database, you'll see that we have these members right now, right? But we want to try to create a new member. So we'll go to register and then we'll try to create a new member by saying test2, and then the password is test2, and then we submit, and this takes us to the profile page. So that means that should have worked. If we check our members, you'll see we have a test2 that has been created, and in the profile section, or if we try to log in, so now that we've logged in, we actually need to log out. So maybe we'll create the log out page first, and then we will try to log out, because now we're logged in. So to log out, we'll just do PHP tag, and then we'll require the header again, because we need to use some of the functions. We will do this try session, which is one of the functions we created previously, and after doing that, we'll just relocate them or redirect them to the login page. And I think that should do it, but I need to add the footer right here as well. So we'll do footer.php. Now that that's done, I think we can leave. We can exit out of logout page and try to log out from here. So we'll do logout.php, and if it's successful, it should take us to the login page. And as you can see, we've gone to the login page. Now we want to try and log in with the user we created. We'll do test2, and submit. And it says, please check your credentials and try again, right? So there's obviously an error there. We do have that user definitely exists. So test2, and it's telling us that the user doesn't exist for some reason. So we'll just verify that the user does exist. We've got test2. If we go back to our login page and see what is the issue, post login looks fine. All this looks fine. We've got username, password, and maybe we can try to output this. So we'll do var dump user exists to check what the result is, and then we'll just do die, because we don't want the program to continue from here. So now I'm just debugging to see what the issue is. And I'm gonna type in test2, and then submit, and it's telling me that there's no records, so the row count is 0. So this is not returning what we want it to return. And the reason why that is we're trying to join the profiles table for the member right here, member with ID 12. And the profiles table doesn't have any row with the member ID 12. So because it doesn't have this data, it's not returning anything. So if we remove this and just check this right here, you should see that the value changes to 1. So if I try this again and do test2, and remove the p.image URL from here, try that again, you'll see that now we have 1, but we want to keep this as it is. Now what we're gonna have to do is on registering, we're gonna have to create that profile, because right now when we log in, we can't find that profile. So when we register a new user, we need to make sure we create that profile. To do that, we're just simply gonna create a new query right here, and it will be create profile equal to run query, and this will be insert into profiles member ID, and the values will be the user ID. And to get the user ID, what we can do is basically, what we can do is just bring this down here, and now we should have access to the user ID right here. So we'll just set the user ID to equal to this, and then we'll use this in here, And as you can see right now, what we've done is basically just, we got the user first, so we get user first, and then we get the actual data and set it to this variable user, and then from there we get the user ID, set it into a new variable, and use that while we're creating a new profile. So we create a new profile for the user using the ID right here, and then that should allow us to log in with this code. So when we log in now, it tries to look for a profile, it will find it, and we can remove this code and it should continue just fine. Now to test this, we will actually go back to the login page and we're going to remove the user that we added. So down here, the member with ID 12 is going to be deleted. So I'm going to delete this row, and then we're going to try to register again. So we go to register.php, and now let's register the user, test2, test2, we submit, and as you can see, we've gone to the profile. So that means the profile must have been created. We check the profile, and as you can see, we've got member 13, member ID 13, and then the profile's got ID 13. So now if I log out and then I try to log in, we should be able to log in without any problems. And as you can see, we've logged in. We've got some errors here, but that's because we haven't set this stuff yet. Line 18 on or in functions.php. So let's just check that because we've already done functions.php. Looks like there's a spelling error somewhere here. We've got an extra O. You get rid of that and we refresh, and you see all the errors are gone. So that's looking good. These are all working: the register, the login, and the logout, it looks like. So that's good. Now, for now, we're going to move on, seeing that all this is working, right? And I think we can move on to the index.php now, which is where you'll have the list of posts. So if I try to log in to TTTT, you'll see that this is the home page, and it's basically the, let me close this off. It's basically the wall of different posts from different users. So this is what we're going to create now. To do that, it's basically going to be, again, the HTML and then some PHP that will handle submitting this code, right? So we'll start with the HTML as always, and we'll create a div that will contain all of this in a container. So div class container, and then we'll do a div inside of that class card, and inside of that we'll do a div class wall container, and here we'll have a title. So we'll do h2 your wall h2, and then we'll create a class called new post, and div class hint for the share something beneficial at the top here, share something beneficial, I think that's spelled correctly. And then we'll have the actual text box or text area as they call it, but we'll put it inside a form, and then we'll have a method that we're going to use when we submit this form, and that will be post, and then an action to where we want to submit this form. We want to submit it to the same file we're currently in, which is index.php. Close the form, and then do a text area with the name of post, and in here we'll do new post input as a class, and we close off this text area, and then a button with type submit, and a text of post. Close off the button, and this is basically this button right here. So now we need to do this part at the bottom where we display the actual posts. And this will be within the wall container. So the wall container is laid out in 3 different sections. You've got title, the form, and then the actual content that we're looking to add, and that will be the list of wall posts. So imagine we had a variable called wall posts, which we will get in a second, or we'll create it in a second. And remember, we've done for each in the past, so we give it the name of the variable, and then the variable that it will create will be wall post. And then we'll do open curly bracket, another PHP tag, close curly bracket, and here we'll set a few things. First, we will set the image source, and this needs to be within the PHP, so we'll do enter and keep the closing tag down here, and here we'll do image source equals to, and we're going to do wall posts, which is the variable right here, and we're going to access the different, if you go to here to wall, you'll see that we have access to post, member, and we will also get the image URL from the profile. So if you go to a wall, you'll see that this has a member ID, and each member ID is linked to a member and a profile. So we'll do a join, and we'll get the image URL here. So here we can access the image URL once we get it later. And then if there is an image URL, right, then we want to set it as uploads and concatenate the image URL. So what that will do is it will check the uploads folder, and inside of it, it will check for this string right here, whatever that string is that's in the database. If that's not working, if this doesn't exist, then we want to use the same thing we used in, I think it was navbar right here. So we copy this and then paste it right here, and that's our image source. Now we can go ahead and create the rest of the wall post. So div wall post, another div, or closing the tag, we've got div class post info, which will be the info of the post, the text and the image. We start with the image in a class img for image, close the div, and inside the div we want to add the image tag source equals to, do a PHP tag echo, and then the image source that we created above, semicolon, close the PHP tag, close the quotes, and close the image tag. And then we want to add the name, so we'll do div class name, and then we'll do PHP echo, and here we just want to echo the wall post name. So this will be the username, and I will show you how you'll get all this data very soon. But for now, we're just writing the HTML, and after that we've got the actual post. So we'll do post container, and here we'll echo the wall post, and the key will be post, semicolon, close the PHP tag, close the div tag. Next one, the data time, the DT, and this again will be a PHP echo wall post, key DT, and close the div, and there you have it. That is the wall post. So I think just get rid of these extra spaces, and that is basically it for the HTML. Now moving on, we'll go to the top of the page just under the first PHP tag, and we will actually extend this and write the code in here. The first thing we want to do is that if the user lands on this page and they're not logged in, we want to send them to the login page. So we'll do if not logged in. So user logged in. Remember, we have this variable from the functions.php. If user is not logged in, we want to redirect them to the index page, which the login page. So login.php. So let's just leave a comment. If not logged in, send to login page. So that's clear. Then we want to handle any form post. So this form right here, when it's posted to this file, you want to handle it here. So we'll do if set post, and we have post. Right here we have post. As you can see, we've got name post. So if this is sent and it's not empty, and post not equal to empty string, we want to handle that. We want to clean the data. As usual, we sanitize string, and then we want to do post. So clean the post and save it in this variable, and then we want to use that variable when we're creating the post. So we'll create a new variable called new post added, and then we'll do run query, and here we'll give it the query, which will be insert into wall, and then we're going to give it member ID and post, and the values are user ID and post. If you're wondering where this is coming from, this is coming from functions right here. We set it if the user is logged in. And close it off with a semicolon. And then we create an alert where we check, or where we set the array as usual to a status key, which will check for a new post added. If it is added, it will give it 200 as a status, otherwise it will give it 500 as a status for the message. Again, we'll check the new post added, and if it's successful, we'll do added post successfully. Otherwise, we'll do error occurred while adding post. So error occurred while adding post, right? And then we want to redirect it to this current page that we're on. So we'll set it alert, and then we redirect it. And at the top here we have alert, so that every time we add an alert and redirect it, you will see the alert appear because we've just set it here. So hopefully that's clear. And then the last thing we need to do here is actually get the page content, which will be the wall posts right here. So we've got wall posts, but we haven't set it up anywhere. So here we will actually get the wall post. So we'll do result equal to run query, and here we'll do select wpost wdt m.name p.image URL from wall w. So we want to get the post from the wall right here, and we want to get the dt from the wall. Do we have a dt? Yes, right here, this dt. And we want to get the name from member, from m. So from m we want to get the member name, and from p, which is profile, we'll get the image underscore URL. So this right here. So the main table will be wall, and then we'll need to join two tables. The first table we can do is members. We'll do m for short, and then on m.id equal to w.memberid. Basically what it's saying is that get the wall post. So for this wall post, it will check the member ID 2, and then it will match it to anyone who has the member ID 2 or the ID of member, which is equal to 2 right here. So it will get the name John from here. And then the second one, it will do join profiles p on p.member ID equal to w.member ID. Alright, so now that we have the member ID 2, we're going to check for the profiles to see if there's any member ID with the number 2, and then we're going to get its image URL. So that's what this is doing. And then we're going to order by WID descending. So we want to get we want to reorder this basically from highest to lowest. So we get the latest posts always at the top. So that's all this is doing. I will go through this again, but for now this is all we need, and we're going to create the wall posts variable right here, and we're going to give it result fetch all. So this is going to get this result, sorry, it's result not results. This will do results fetch all, which will get all the data that comes from this query and set it to this wall posts. And down here we're looping through this wall posts, and then for each wall post we're outputting this HTML. So that's basically what you see. If I go to the browser here, for each one of these, this is what you see. Each wall post, you get in this output right here. So that's that. I think that's it for the index.php for now. We can always come back if there's issues. The next thing we're going to look at is the profile.php right here. Now for the profile, what we're going to do is we're going to create the PHP tags, and at the top we're actually going to add the PHP code starting with require header, as we do in all the pages, and then we're actually going to add the alert at the top as well, so that we see alerts when we add something new to the profile, whether it's the bio or the image. And then we're going to check again if the user is logged in, or if they're not logged in, we redirect them to the login page. So we don't want them to go to the profile page unless they're logged in. So we'll do user logged in, and notice that we have the exclamation mark here to do user is not logged in. There we go. And then if the user is not logged in, we want to do header location, and then we'll do login.php. So we redirect them to the login page. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add in the HTML first, and then we'll come back to this. So before that, we'll just add the footer at the bottom of the page. So we'll do footer.php, and then above we'll add the HTML. So for the HTML, we'll add, as usual, add the div container, and we'll actually add a card here as well. So close this div, and inside of this, if there is a profile, so what we're going to do above here is we'll actually get a profile using the run query. So we'll get the profile from the database, and if there is a profile, so we'll do if profile open curly brackets, and then at the bottom here we'll do PHP close curly brackets. And I'm actually seeing that I missed a semicolon here, so I'm going to add it and then go back here. So anything inside of this will run if we have a profile, and we're going to write div class profile, and inside of that is basically the profile data. So we'll do div class profile info, and if I just remind you of what that looked like, if we go to profile here, you'll see that we have this card, and inside it we have this image, and underneath it we have the text, and on the right side we have the bio, the text box, and then the ability to add a file as well, and then the button at the bottom. So for this part, we're doing the profile info, which will be the image and the name. So let's do that first. We close off this div. And then inside of here, we've got the image and the name. So we'll do image source, and then we'll give it a PHP tag, opening, closing. And here we'll do echo profile, which will be this variable here that we'll create above after this. And then this will be an array, and inside of it we'll access the key name. This will give us the name of the user. And we actually need the image here, sorry, not the name. So I'm gonna cut this, and I'm just gonna add image source like we did previously, and then we're gonna create this above here. But for now, we carry on. We close this off, and then underneath it, when you add the div with the class name, and here I can do echo and then paste this thing again, and then close the div. Yes, that looks fine. And then below that, we're gonna add the bio. So we'll do bio container here, and then close that div. And then here we'll do form. So this is where the form is gonna sit, and we'll do action, and that will be profile.php. So we're submitting the form to this page, and to submit it, we'll use the method post. And there's one more thing we need to add here, because we have the file input type. So to submit the file input type, we will use something called inc type, and then we'll do a multi-part form data. So this will allow us to submit a file to the backend, and I need to use form there. I need to close the form. There we go. Oh, I hate this. There we go. And then we'll do div, basically just a title of bio, and then close that div, and then we'll do text area, and then we'll give it a name of bio, and then a placeholder of enter your bio here, and close that off. And then we'll do PHP echo, and then profile, and this should be bio, I believe. And then close that off, and then close off the text area, and that's that. Next, we'll do the import field of type file, import type file, and then we'll give it a name of profile image right here. Close that off, and then we'll give it a new line, and then we'll do input type. This one will be hidden, and it will be set to edit profile, and then another new line, and then a button with a type of submit, and update is the text for the button. So that's that. I think that's it for the HTML. Now we're going to go on to actually getting this data profile, right, and handling this input type field. So when we input something, or we change the bio right here, we actually save the data. And to do that, we will use the PHP code up here. This is going to be broken down to two sections. The first section is where we're going to do page query or page data query, and this will basically be something like result equal to run query, and here we'll do select m.name p.image URL p.bio. So we're getting the name of the user, the image URL for the profile, and the bio of the profile from members m, and then we join profiles p on p.member id equal to m.id, and we're getting this user where m.id is equal to user.id, and this user.id is coming from functions again. So all we're doing here is we're getting the user name that is matching where the ID is equal to this ID, and we're also joining the profiles table where the MID is equal to the member ID in the profile, and we get the image URL and the bio from that. And down here we'll just do profile equals to result fetch, and this will give us the profile. So down here you'll see that we're using this profile right here. If it exists, we output the profile. If it doesn't exist, we don't output anything. So that's the first part. The second part is handling the post data, right? So handle post data form save. So we run an if condition where we check is set post edit profile. So we check if this edit profile is set right here, and it's only set when you submit the form. So if it's set, that means the form has been submitted, and we'll create a variable called values where we'll keep all the values that we're going to update in the table, and then we'll check if there's an image that was uploaded. So to do that, we'll do if. Remember, if you've watched the PHP tutorial, you'll remember that this right here, this global variable files, is where the files are usually added. So we'll do profile image because that's the name that we've given it down here. So files, profile image, and then the name of that file. If it's not empty, that means we have a file that we need to upload. So here we actually add code to save file. This is where we're going to add the code to save the file, but because this code might be a bit longer than usual, we're going to actually separate it into a new file so that this file doesn't get too long, basically. So I'm going to do include, and I'm going to do handle upload file.php, and I'm going to create that down here. So we'll do handle upload file.php. Okay, and then we'll add the code to handle the upload. But for now, we'll carry on with this, and then we'll add this. Assuming we carry on there, we go to bio, create a variable called bio where we'll sanitize a string that the user has added, and that will be post bio, and save it to a bio variable. And then for the image URL, we'll check from this file, if the upload was successful, we'll return a variable like upload okay, and then using that variable we can check if the upload was okay or not. So we'll do is set upload okay. So if this is set, and this we haven't created yet, but we will create it inside of this folder or this file. So if this is set, that means the upload was okay and we have a URL. So we'll use this URL, and this URL is basically going to be the same as the file name. So again, we'll do profile image name, and if this upload is not okay, then we just give it an empty string. We don't want to update image URL. Then we want to push these values to the array values. So we've got the array values and we're pushing to it bio equals to bio. So we're just pushing this string to the array values, and then if we have an image URL, so this checks if we have an image URL right here. If we have a value, then it will do this. Otherwise, if it's an empty string, it will skip this part. So if it has a URL, we'll do array push values and then image URL equals to image URL right here. So as you can see, again, if we have an image URL, this will just basically push it to the values array, and then the values array will change it from an array to a string so that we can push it to the table. We'll do values equals to implode, and this is a function that we've covered previously where we convert an array to a string. We implode with a comma in between and then values. So we want to convert this array to a string, and then we want to push this to the table. So now we want to save the data to the table. So we do profile edit or profile edited equals to run query, and here we want to do update profiles set values where member ID equals to user ID. Now you might be wondering, okay, wait, what is going on here? What is this values, and how did you just add it to this query just like that? Well, if you've done this previously with me in the MySQL video, you'd know that we usually do update table name set something equal to something where da 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 da. So we're basically skipping we're skipping past this part right here in this section. But the reason we've done it this way is because we want to group multiple changes together. So instead of doing this for each, writing this whole query for each section that we want to update. So for the bio, we do this whole query, and then for the image URL, we do this whole query. We're just grouping them together. So we're grouping the updates, the bio and the image URL into one string. And the way you do that is just write something equals to something, just like here, bio equals to bio, and then we separate them by a comma. So basically what this looks like is bio equals to some text, and then comma, and then image URL equals to some text. So this is what this looks like after it's been converted from an array to a string. When it's an array, it looks more like this. Bio equals to some text, and then image URL equals to, again, some text. So this is what it looks like when we do the array push. So the first time we do array push, we add bio to bio, or bio equals to bio right here. And then the second time we do image URL equals to image URL. So now we have two items in the array, and then implode basically just turns this array into this text, and then we're using this values text right here. So this basically looks like, if you copy this and paste it here, this is basically the final string that we have. If I comment these out, and as you can see, this right here is equivalent to this right here. So hopefully that's clear. This has just grouped all the updates that we're going to do and separated them by a comma. And that's that. I'm going to comment this out for reference. But we're going to move on to the next part, which is to set the image URL, if it exists, we want to update the session. So the session, if you remember, was holding a key called user image, which would hold the user's image. So we want to update that in case the image was updated. And here, if you go to functions, or maybe login, down at login, you'll see that when user logs in, we set this session user image. So this is the one we're updating. And then we want to set some alerts. So it's same thing again, alert equals to an array, status, and this array will be based on the profile edited variable. If it is true, then it's 200, otherwise it's 500, and the message will be similar. Profile edited, profile updated successfully if it's true. Oops, otherwise error occurred while updating profile. Okay, and then we just want to refresh the page. So we'll do location profile.php, and that should be it for this page. If we need to add anything later on, we will come back to it, but for now I think that's good to go. We're going to close this off, close this off, close this off, and then just go back to handle upload file because we didn't finish that. We actually haven't started it yet. So here we'll do a few things. We're going to actually check for a few things. To start off with, we'll set a few variables. So we've got target underscore dir, which will equal to uploads slash, and then we've got target file. So the file that we're trying to target, and that will be based on the target directory. And then base name, which is a function that will returns trailing name component of path. So we give it a path and it returns a trailing name, the last name, and I'll explain this in a second. Profile image and then name. So say you have a path, for example, like home, documents, work, clients, etc. And then at the end of it, you have index.php, right? This will basically get you the base name. So the base name right here is literally this, the last thing, the file name basically. So this is what this is doing. And target file is for the file that we want to create. So this is the target file, the file that we want to create. It will have this destination. It will be uploads slash and then the file name. So it will be uploads in here and then the name of the file directly. And then we'll set a variable called upload OK. Remember we set this in profile. So we check in if upload is okay. We checked for it here somewhere. If upload exists, then we set the name to image URL. So upload equals to 1. So here the first thing we're going to check is if image file is actually image or it's a fake image. So check if image file is an actual image or not. To do that, we'll do check equals to get image size, and it will do files and files profile image temp name. Whoops. And then based on this, we can do if check not equal to false. That means it's an image, otherwise it's not an image. So we'll do, if it's an image, we'll do upload OK equals 1. Otherwise we'll do upload OK equals to 0. Next we want to check if file already exists, because we don't want the user to be able to upload multiple files of the same file. So file exists, target file. So this basically checks if the file already exists. It's a predefined function. I think we've used this in previous videos. And then curly brackets array, upload OK equals to 0 if the file already exists. Otherwise, move on and check file size. And here we'll just check if the file size, files, profile image size is greater than 500,000. And if it's not, we'll do upload OK equals to 0. And then this is basically bytes. So I think that's 500, or I think it's MB, I'm not too sure. We will come back to that, but we will check the file format here, and that will be allow certain file formats. So we'll do if image file type not equal to GPG or JPG, and image file type not equal to PNG, and image file type not equal to JPEG, and last one, image file type not equal to GIF. If it's none of these, then we do upload OK equals 0. And so here we just check if upload OK equals to 0. If it is, then there was an issue. Error occurred, file not uploaded. Otherwise, the file has uploaded, or everything is fine and we're ready to upload the file. So try to upload here. And the way you would upload is basically just use the function move uploaded file and give it a from and to. So the from is the file name or the temporary name. So temp name, and then the to is the target file that we created at the top, the target file variable. And then we'll do open close brackets. Here the file has uploaded successfully. Otherwise, error occurred here. Or file was not uploaded. So what's happening here is at the start we're setting upload OK to 1, so we're assuming that the file upload is fine, but then we're checking different things. So we check if the file is actually an image, we check the file already exists, we check the file size, we check the file type, and if any of these are not what we want them to be, then we set the upload OK to 0 and it doesn't upload the file. Right here, if the upload is 0, don't upload the file, otherwise upload the file, and this right here will upload the file, and you should see it appear in the uploads directory. So coming back to the profile.php, just up here we're checking if the files array has a file of name profile image. If it does, then it will include this file. If it doesn't, then it will just skip this part, and this right here will be false because this never gets instantiated or defined if this file doesn't come into play. So only when this file comes into play, we have an upload okay. So hopefully that's clear, but I will come back to it once again. For now, we can save this file and move on to the next part, which is also the last part, and that is the friends.php. In terms of the HTML and the PHP is the last part. We still have the CSS and the JavaScript to write. Well, for friends.php, this is slightly more complicated maybe, but we'll start off as usual with the PHP at the top, header.php, so require header.php, and we also want to require the alert right underneath it, alert.php, and then we want to check if the user is not logged in, user logged in, we want to redirect them to the login page. And then this will be broken down into two different parts mainly. So the part where we handle the get data, so basically the data that is coming from the HTML, and also the second part will be the get page data. So we want to get all the friends that exist for that user, right? So I think we'll start off by getting the page data instead of the HTML this time. And here we will have two different variables, main variables. We'll have the members and we have the friends. For the members, we'll create members result to begin with. And here we'll save this to a query. And this query will basically get us all the members that currently exist and their profiles. So if I can just remind you or refresh your memory, if I go to the friends section, you'll see that there's two different portions to this page. The first one is a friends list and the second one is other members list. So this is the other members list, which will include all the users, right? So to get all the users, we will do select m.id, which is the member ID, and then the member's name, and then the profile's image URL. And we'll get most of that from the members M, which will be our main table. And then we will join the profile table. So profiles, P for short, on m.id equal to p.memberid. So it will look for this and it will join it based on this condition right here. And that will give us the members results, and we can do members equals to members results fetch all. So this will help us fetch all the data. Now for the friends, we'll have a friends result again. We'll run a query, and within that query we will select. What we want to do here is basically go to friends and get each friend from here, and then join the data based on this friend ID. So we'll join the member's name with this ID that we've gotten from here, and we'll join the member's ID with this profile's member ID as well. So let's write the code for this. We'll do select m.name, p.image URL, and f.friend ID. All of that will be from friends F. So this is our main table, friends F. And then we'll join the members M for short on f.friend ID equal to m.id. So we're getting the friend ID from here, and we're matching it to the members table, the ID here. So that way we have the user's name, right? And then we want to join also the profiles. p for short, on m.id equals the p.memberid. So again, we're using the MID right here, the one that we get from here. The one that we get from friend ID, we join the member ID with it, and then using that same member ID, we get the profile using the member ID, the matching member ID. So here we'll do where f.memberid equal to user ID, and this is what we've set in the functions right here. So this is basically saying get me all the friends where the member ID is of this ID, and then join the members where the ID is equal to MID, and join me the profiles where the MID is equal to the PID. Right? So once again, it's getting the friends, all the friends, and it's saying select the member ID right here. For example, let's say the user ID is 2. Now it's telling me to go into this table and get all the 2s under member ID, and using that we're going to match any IDs in the members table to number 2, and using this ID number 2 we're going to match any of the profiles with number 2. So it's going to get this, it's going to get this, and it's going to return it in the same row. And then we're going to do the same thing as here, copy and paste it, but this time we'll do friends results, we'll do friends here, and that should give us the friends list. One more thing we want to do is we want to cut out all the friend IDs. So just to group all the friend IDs, we're going to do array map, which is a function that applies the callback to elements of the given array, which we've covered before. So we give it a function, and it will run that function on each item of the array. So we'll do function item, and then curly brackets, and here we'll do return item friend ID. So this will basically just pluck out the friend ID from the array, and the array will be friends. So this will give us an array, this right here will give us an array, and we're putting this array in the array map right here, and we're pulling out all the friend IDs, and we're saving it to a variable called friend IDs, which will contain an array of all the friend IDs that we pulled out. So that's good. Now we want to actually see the data, because we're writing a lot of code and we're not seeing much, not yet anyway. So we're going to add the HTML down here. We're going to create a div class container, and we need to close that off, and then inside here we'll do a div class card, close that off, and then inside of that we'll do your friends list, which will be h4 for the title, friends list h4, and then here we'll do div class friends container, close that off, and here we will actually loop through the friends and output the data. So we'll do for each friends as friend, open curly brackets, close the PHP tags. Actually, we're going to add one more thing, the image source right here. Again, we'll do friend image URL, because now we have access to the image URL. If it exists, we'll do uploads slash concatenate friend image URL. Otherwise, we want to copy that link that we had in the navbot right here, and then we want to paste it into this. So this will be the default image if you don't have any images. And then we want to close the curly bracket first, and inside of here continue outputting the data or the HTML. So here we'll do friend container. This was friends container, this is friend container. And here we'll do image class friend image. And we want to give it a source of echo image source, which we've just created up there, right here. So that's that. Close the image. Have I closed the image? There we go. Close the image. And then we'll do friend name. And here we'll add the echo friend name and close the div, and then div class action a, and then we'll do remove underscore friend equals to 1 and friend underscore ID equals to another PHP tag echo friend, and then here I think we can just give it the friend ID, and then close this off, remove friend a tag, close the a tag, and then we close the div. And I'm going to put this in a new line so that you can see it, and then put this in a new line as well, this in a new line, and this in a new line. So this is basically a action button with some text, remove friend, which is a link that will add this to the top. So this is the opposite of post. This will be the get method, which adds stuff to the link as we covered previously, and this will basically give it the key and then the value, the key and then the value. So the first key is remove friend is equal to 1. That's the value for remove friend. And then the second key, which is separated by an and character, friend ID is the second key, and then the value right here. So here we basically have two keys, and we'll see this working in a second, but we carry on. And let me just show you this very quickly. As you can see, if I add a friend right here, this is the remove friend that you're seeing. So if I just hover over this, at the bottom left you see that you have a URL that's appeared. So this is the URL that it will add, and that's basically that. Now at the bottom, if we don't have any friends, we want to output something. So if not count friends, which basically means if you don't have any friends, we will output a title saying nothing to show yet, right? So that is the first part. That is the friends list. Now for the second part, which is the members list, we're going to create another card. So it's going to be inside the container, the first container. So we're going to create another card inside here and close it off. And then we're going to create a title, and we're going to call this title other members list. I feel like I spelled that wrong. H4. Then we'll do a div class members container. And then here we will loop through all the members. So we'll do for each and we'll close this off. We'll do for each members this time as member, and we'll expand this a bit because we want to add some PHP here, and here we'll check. So basically we don't want to see our own self within this list, right? So my user is called TTTT. So I don't want to see TTTT as here because that is me, right? I shouldn't see myself in the other members list. So the way you can do that is by using the continue keyword, which skips through a iteration in the loop. So you can do if the member ID is equal to the user ID, which is the user's ID, you can do continue, right? So if this ID is equal to the user ID, we can just continue and not output anything. If it's not, then we'll create an image source, and that will be member image URL. We will check if that exists. If it does, then we'll do uploads / concatenate member image URL, and then if that doesn't exist, like we said, we'll set it to this variable. And then we also want to check if, for example, I have these friends here. As you can see, tester is now my friend, and at the bottom here it doesn't say add friend anymore, it tells me your friend, right? So it's recognizing who's my friend and who's not. To do that, we'll create a variable called is befriended, and here this will basically be a boolean, a true or false, and we'll do in array. So we'll check if the array has something, and this will basically be the member ID, and it will check if the member ID is in our friend IDs list. So remember earlier we created this friend IDs, so we created an ID with all the values of our friend IDs. So if we have tester, John and Michelle as our friends, in that array we will have 1, 2, and 3, and this basically checks if this ID is in that array 1, 2, or 3, then this will be true, otherwise it will be false. And based on that we will output some text, whether it will be your friend or add a friend. If the friend exists, then it's your friend. If the friend doesn't exist, then it's add a friend, right? So then we'll just close this right here, this curly bracket, so that we get rid of the error. And inside here we'll output the content that we want for the member container. So inside this member container we'll output a few things. We'll output the image and the name, image, name, and then the text at the bottom. So for the image we'll do image class member image, and then we'll do source PHP echo image source that we calculated above, or we defined above here. And then we will close this image tag and create a new div with a class of member name. And then here we'll do PHP echo member name, and then we'll do div, and then we'll basically use this variable right here to check if we should output is a friend or is not a friend, or your friend or add a friend. So we'll do an if statement, but it has to be in a PHP tag. If not is befriended, so if we haven't befriended this person, then we'll do open brackets PHP close brackets else open brackets close PHP open PHP close brackets. So So this is basically an if else statement. Here we will add some text or some HTML. If we haven't befriended this person, we want to add a div with class action, which will be a tag, and this will include the get variables or the get keys, which will be add friend equal to 1, and another key which will be friend ID. Who do we want to add? And that will be equals to PHP echo member, and then here we'll do friend ID, and that should suffice. Let's close this tag, close this ref, and then close this a tag. Here we'll just add the text add friend, close the a tag, and close the div tag. So I'm going to spread this onto multiple lines so it's clearer. And then in the else portion, we'll do div class silent your friend. So now this will check if the friend exists. It will say your friend. If he doesn't exist in the list, then you'll get add a friend, and if you click on it, it will hit these values in the get, which will basically go to this part where we handle the get data. And I think that's the only thing left to do now, is to handle the get data. For some reason I haven't added the footer at the bottom, so I'm just going to do that now before I forget. So footer.php at the bottom right there, that's looking good. Now if we go to the top to handle the get data, what we're going to do to begin with is check if remove friend is set or if add friend is set, right? So these are the two instances that we have. So we'll check if is set get add friend. We wanna add friend here. Else if is set get remove friend, then we want to remove friend here. Okay, so let's start with add a friend. We'll do friend ID equals to sanitize string, and this is basically the user input. Again, we're cleaning it, and then we're going to use it to add friend. So create a variable called add friend, and then we'll do run query, and here we'll do the insert. So we'll do insert into friends values user ID and friend ID, right? And this will be the member ID and the friend ID basically. Now, if you're wondering where we get this, again, we get this from the functions.php, and then we'll set the session alert to let the user know if it was a successful transaction, if you like, and then we'll do status equals to if add a friend then 200, if not then 500. So if this was successful, 200, if not 500. Same thing for the message, add a friend or add friend. Did that work? Friend added successfully. Otherwise, error occurred adding a friend. And we'll do a header to redirect them. Location friends. So we're just refreshing the page once the update has been saved and the alert has been added. Now we want to do the same thing down here. So I'm just going to copy and paste and then fix the parts that needs to be fixed to just speed things up. Friend ID, we still need the friend ID, we need to clean it, so that's the same. And then here we'll change the add friend to remove friend, and then we'll update this to be delete from friends where friend ID equals to friend ID and member ID equals to user ID. And we just need to change that and make it capital. Although I think small works, but I'm going to stick to this just in case. And an error occurred while removing a friend, while adding a friend, and here while friend removed successfully. So that's good. So we basically handled the data for adding a friend here, and we handled the data for removing a friend here. And with that, I think we have everything we need except the CSS. So we'll just look through the app very briefly to see what we have and what we don't have. So let's just go back to the main page, which takes us to the login page. And here we'll try to log in with test2 if the user exists. And as you can see, we can log in, and we're getting the posts as well. So we're getting the post that already exists, these two. And if we go to friends, we are seeing errors here. So let's just check what's happening. If we go to friends, line 39, what do we have? We have select MID, we forgot a comma here. So let's try that and refresh. We still have another error, but this time line 47. Probably forgot another comma or something, so let's just check. Name, image URL, this is fine. Join members, we've spelled members wrong. Members, we refresh, and that clears the error as well. So that's looking good, although this doesn't seem to be right. Line 90 on friends, so line 90. So right here, if we just have a look at that, we'll see that we actually don't have anything called friend ID in the members section. We have an ID, but we don't have a friend ID. So this is supposed to be ID. That's my mistake. And if we refresh this, you should see that everything is working fine now. And of course, there's no styling, but we have the data that we need. If we go to the wall, we have the data. If we go to friends, we have the data. And if I try to add a friend, it'll say error occurred while adding a friend. Now that's interesting. Wonder why? Well, let's check. If we go to friends, you'll see that it actually added the friend, but it's still showing us an error. So if we do Michelle, we added Michelle, and then we check, it's actually not adding Michelle. So there is an issue, and we need to figure out what that issue is. We'll go up to where we add a friend, and we'll just var dump add friend to see what's happening, and we'll die right here to end the application. Refresh, and then we'll add a friend and see what happens. It says we have a syntax error next to insert. So what we've done is we've just put insert instead of insert, and that's a very silly error. But as you can see, we figured out where the error is just by dying the application at a certain point. So that's how you would usually debug to check for errors. But now if we try to remove this and go to .php, and this is how you would usually debug. And as you can see, when you hit the submit button, or when you click on the add friend, this will get added to the URL, and this is basically the get variables. And if you wanted to add more get variables or get values, you would separate them by an and then you would add a key and equal to value. So this will be the key and this will be the value. And so now let's just test it out. Remove this, hit enter, and try to add someone as a friend. So we'll add John as a friend. As you can see now in the friends list, we have John. Try to remove the friend. Now we have nothing to show. So everything is working as expected. all that is left to do is actually add some CSS to make this look prettier, because right now it looks ugly. So we're going to do that. We're going to close off everything, and we're going to open up the CSS file. Now we're also going to open up the JS file, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the header, and then we actually need to look at the nav bar. So we can close the header off. The nav bar is what we're going to look at, because the first thing is when we click on the menu icon, we want it to display the menu. So we're going to have to use some JavaScript for this, and to do that we will add a onClick event function. OnClick, we want to run toggle menu, for example. So we need to create this toggle menu in our JavaScript, right? And to do that, we will just do function toggle menu, and then here we'll use menu, variable menu, and this is where jQuery comes in. So jQuery is the library that we pulled in, the JavaScript library, which simplifies using the DOM with JavaScript. So usually with JavaScript we have to write something like document.get element by ID and then ID name, etc. to select an element. But for now with jQuery you can just simply do this and then the name of the element. So this is the class and then the class name. As you can see, we've got mobile menu. So when you click this button, we want to show this menu. So that's why I've selected this. And then here we do if menu.css. So we're accessing the CSS and the height specifically. If the menu height is equal to 0 pixels, we want to change the menu.css display to flex, and then we want to animate the height to 300. So this will help us animate the menu. So just like this, if I was to show you this example right here, if I was to click on this, you'll see that it animates and it goes down and then it goes back up. It doesn't just show in height, it animates the height from top to bottom. So that's an animation using animate. So here, if there's no height, we want to give it height. Now else, if there is a height, we want to remove the height. So we'll do animate height 0 pixels, and then this has to be in strings. And then when that happens, we want to do a callback function, which will set the menu CSS to display none. And the reason why we do this callback function is that we want to display none only after the height is 0 and not before, so that the animation continues playing and finishes and then does this. So that's it for our JavaScript. Let's go to our CSS, and our CSS is gonna include firstly the font that we're using right here, and I'm gonna include the link in the description, but you can feel free to just go to Google Fonts and then look for, let's have a look here. Let's go to fonts, Google developers. That's not the right link. Let's stick to the first one and click on fonts. And here you want to search for, let's see what font are we using here. If I click on HTML, if I click on, I think this is it. So we're using Oswald. Let's try to search for Oswald. This is it right here. So if you just click on this and then import and then copy this right here into the top of your CSS, that should do the job. And then you can copy this as well and paste it into the browser or into your text editor. So first we're going to do asterisk just to reset some things. So box sizing, we'll reset it to border box, and then margin and padding to 0 as usual. And then here we'll do HTML and body, and we'll set the font that we just copied. So this will give us the font that we want. We can quickly check and you'll see that we have the font that we want. That's looking good so far. And then the body, we want to achieve this right here, this background color that is changing, the linear gradient that's changing in the background. We can do background linear gradient, and then we'll do -45 degrees, and then the colors that you want. So you can choose any colors you want. You can test around as much as you want, but I'm going to stick with these colors for now. And then we'll do background size 500, and then animation gradient 15s ease infinite. So we need to create this animation gradient, and the way you create it is using keyframes, as you may have seen in the CSS video. For 0%, we want it to be a background position of 0% to 50%, and then if it's 50%, we want it to be 100 to 50%, and then lastly we want it to be 0 to 50% at 100%. So change this to 50 and change this to 100, and we're good to go. Test this out, and nothing has changed yet, so we're missing something. And let's just check quickly. Background ease gradient, I think we've misspelled something here. Keyframes, that's it. Then we refresh, still not seeing anything. Let's make sure we have our CSS here. It is being called in, so that should be appearing. Let's do console. Nope, no errors. Let's see what we're doing wrong. Gradient 15s, animation ease 500, linear gradient. It's all looking good, except the -45 here should be -45 degrees. And if we refresh, as you can see, we've got that working just fine. So now we want to move on to the nav bar. But before we move on to nav bar, we do some defaults for the links, which is the A tag. We'll do text decoration none. We'll do color black, and we'll do display block. And then we'll do position relative as well. Now, before we start with the navbar, I'm going to leave a comment here saying navbar, and then we'll end navbar. So everything inside of here will be for the navbar. Now, the first thing I want to mention before I start doing this is that we're going to take a mobile first approach, where we try to design the website for a mobile and then build it up to design it for a bigger screen. And that way you can cover the multiple screens. It's easier to go from a smaller screen to bigger screen than from a bigger screen to smaller screen. So always try to have a mobile first approach when you're designing your CSS or implementing your CSS. So with that in mind, we're going to do .navbar, and here we'll set the position to relative and the width to 100% and the height to 80%, and we'll also set the background color to transparent, and the display will be flex, and the padding will be 0.1 EM. If we just check that out quickly, you'll see that now we have the navbar at the top, still looking very messy, but we'll get there. For the logo, we want to align south to the center, and for the nav links, in the side links, we want to do a display flex, and flex direction should be raw. So if you just check this out again, now you can see the links have been assigned from left to right. And if we do .nav links and do a position of relative and just move them along by 100 pixels from the left, and then here we want to add media screen and max width 800 pixels, and we'll do nav links display not. So this will basically hide the links on a smaller screen. So what this means, media screen and max width, is basically add the CSS if the screen is less than 800. Once it reaches 800, this doesn't get applied anymore. But as long as the screen is smaller than 800, which is the maximum width, then all of the CSS will be added. So here we're just adding the display none to hide the navigation links if the screen is bigger or smaller than 800, sorry. Next up, we'll do navigation links li. So the li within the nav links, and we want to set the list style type to none to remove the bullet points, and we'll align self to center. And then we'll do nav item a and side links a, and this will basically just change the color to black. We want to do a min width to 80, so we want all the links to look similar to each other. Text align center, and then padding 30 pixels by 20 pixels. So that's good. If we just have a look at this, just to keep an eye on things, and as you can see, we've got these set up, but we have these images that are coming in the way at the minute, but that's fine. We carry on, and if we go to, actually what we should do is just try to log out first of all. So we do logout.php, and as you can see now, we've got a bit of a clearer screen. And here what we'll do is we will set the nav item a hover. So when we hover on an item, we also want to do that for the side links, not just the nav item, but the side links. When we hover on an item, we want to change the color to white and give it a background of black, a see-through black. So we'll do RGBA 000.05, and if you have a look at that, when you hover, you'll see now we have this effect. Dot side links to change the position of register login to the right. So we'll do side links position absolute, and then top 0 pixels and right 30 pixels. As you can see, we've got it to the right now. And we want to hide the side links if the screen is smaller than 800. So we'll copy this, paste it, and change the nav links to side links. And what else do we want to do? We want to do side links and align the A tags self-center, just like that. And then we want to change the menu icon, menu icon to position absolute right 20 pixels, top 27 pixels, color black, and cursor pointer, and then font size to 1.5e. Cursor pointer just gives you this cursor, so when you highlight over it gives you this. And we also want to hide the menu icon if the screen is smaller than 800 again. So we'll copy this, paste it, and then change this to the menu icon, which we've already done. I think this was supposed to be side links, sorry. We're supposed to hide the side links. I'm not sure how I messed that up. So we want to hide the side links up here and then hide the menu icon down here. So the idea is to keep each one next to each other so that you can always find it easy to find certain stylings. So if I refresh this now and have a look at it, things should start disappearing. So we actually want these two to remain. So with that being done, we go to mobile menu, and here we want to set position to absolute and left to 0 and top to 80, and then we want to display none. So initially there won't be any mobile menu to see until the user clicks on that button. So width will be 100%, height will be 0, text align will be center, flex direction will be column, and then the background will be set to, we'll use the same thing that we set up here. We'll set it down here, and then we want to change the LIs for this menu. So mobile menu li will do the same thing as we did earlier. The type will be none, no bullet points, and the font size will be 1.3 em. And then we'll do the same thing again, but for the A tags. So we'll do A, and then we'll edit that and do paddings of 0.5 em and 1 em. And then we'll do mobile menu li hover. Here we'll set the background color. Every time you hover it will change to black. Again, it will be a see-through black. So 0, 0, 0, and then the opacity over 0.5. And then we'll do mobile menu li, again a hover, and this time we will change the font weight to bold and the color to white every time you hover. So let's see if we can just have a look at this. We refresh and then click on this, you see the menu, and as you hover over you'll see the background and the text changing. Right now this is not working on closing. There's an error in the JavaScript file, and I've misspelled animate. So if I go back to the JavaScript file and fix that, add an A, close that, refresh, and then open and close, and everything is working fine there. If I go to .logout and add a display flex to that, a font size 1.3 em, and a color of white. This is when we log in and we hover over the item. Align items center. So what I've done here is basically when I log in, as we have here, if you highlight over this, you'll get this logout. So we're adding the padding, we're adding the color, we're adding the background, and we're also adding the alignment. So we're aligning it to the center, vertically and horizontally. and the font size as well. And then we want to also fix the link within that. So the link inside the logout will be color white and text align will be center. And we have a few things as well on that screen, and that will be the username. We want to color that white, and then we have the avatar drop down, which is basically the black background. So we'll do avatar drop down, and that's display none. And I'm gonna just open this up because I can't quite remember all of the classes, so I'm gonna have to check here. And here we have avatar drop down, as I thought, and we'll do a right 20 pixels, top 20 pixels, and then a display of flex. Actually, yes, it's a display. This should be position, should it? Sorry, this should be display none, and this should be right 20, padding 100 pixels, and text alignment center, and then we'll do a border radius for the corners to be 5 pixels, and then we'll do flex direction column to go up from top to bottom. And we'll do a gap of 1 EM and a width of 200 pixels and a height of 100 pixels, and the background color, which is going to be black, semi see-through, and that should be that right there. Again, we can't see that until we log in, so maybe we should log in and have a look at it. Okay, so these should appear when we are above 800, so that's something that needs to be changed. And if I go to this right here and I move back up a bit, I can see that this we've set to menu min width 800, which means that if the screen is bigger than 800, we hide this. And here we've done the same thing, although we should have said max width. So you need to make sure that this is max width. So the width, if the width is 800, then this will appear. If it's less than 800, then it will disappear. So that's the way we want it. So we want it to appear if it's greater than 800 and disappear if it's less than 800. So now we can try to log in. We'll use test2, and here everything is a bit of a mess, but we'll get to that. And at the top, we want this to be at the top right? So this is what we're doing now. We're still at the nav bar. We're moving to the avatar. So the user avatar, which is right here, user avatar container. User avatar container will be a position of absolute, so it can be free, and then right to 20 pixels and top 20 pixels, and then display flex, and then flex direction row. Have a look at that, and as you can see, we've got it up here. We just need to fix the sizing. We'll do that in a second though. For now, we'll do the media, screen, and max width. So we don't want this to show up if it's less than 800 pixels. Display none, and that should be hidden. Now, a few more things we want to do. We want to do user avatar container hover plus avatar drop down. So we want to show the drop down. We want to show the drop down when the avatar is hovered over, and we want to also show the drop down when the drop down itself is hovered over. Otherwise it will give you a very nasty flickering effect, which we don't want. Now I want to add a few common CSS properties that we will face in different pages. So we'll just put common here, and then here I'll put end common. So these are our common CSS variables or properties. We've got the image, which will reoccur in different pages. We'll set the width to 50 pixels and the height to 50 pixels and the border radius to 50%. And then we've got the container, which we'll set to width 50% and then margin auto, which will center it. And then we can do the card, which is available or is visible on multiple pages. And here we'll set the background color to RGBA 255, 255, 255, which is white, but it's very transparent, so you won't be able to see the white. And then we'll do a box shadow 0, 0, 1, 0 pixels, 1 pixel, RGBA, again white, but this time it's fully apparent. So this will basically be let's go to this, and as you can see right here, the background, this is a see-through or transparent white, but at the back you've got the shadow, which is a clear white. And then you've got a padding of 10 pixels, and we've got a border radius of 5 pixels and a margin of 50% and an auto. And then we have a dot card header and a dot card body, and we'll do padding 10 pixels for that. And then we'll do card header to just change the font weight to bold, and we'll change the font size to 1.2 EM. And then now onto the group of forms. So the form group, we'll do font weight bold, and then we'll also do let's see, margin 20 pixels 0, and then we'll display that to flex, and flex direction will be top to bottom direction, which will be column, and then we'll do a gap of 0.5 EM. So let's just, to see what the form looks like, we'll actually log out. So I can go to log out right here, and now we should be able to see the form, and it's already looking a lot better than it was a second ago, just by setting this form. And the beauty of this is if you go to register, I think I can click this and it takes you to register. It looks identical. So these are common classes that we've created and we've used in multiple pages to speed things up. And input type text, which is basically this and the other text on the login page. And we also want to update the type password too, because they're both similar, to be honest. I think we don't need the quotes. Let's try it. Padding 5 pixels, border radius 5 pixels, and then we'll do the border color. So border will be 1 pixel solid, and then the color RGBA, again we'll do white, but we'll set it to 0.5 opacity. And then background color transparent, and we want to update the placeholder. So the placeholder right here, instead of it being white, we'll change it to or the text and the placeholder, instead of it being white, we'll change it to gray. So we'll just take this and copy it and paste it into color. That's that. And then for the button, we want to update the button so that it has a padding of 10 pixels and a background color of dark gray. So we've got this, if I can do hashtag 2D, 2D, 2D. And then we've got a border of none. Color of white and a radius or border radius of 5 pixels. Now we want to do the container that we set up here to be 50%. This will basically be for the bigger screens, and for the smaller screens, oh sorry, this will be for the smaller screens. For the bigger screens it will be more like, so media, screen, and max width 100 or 1000 pixels, container width 85%. So if the screen is smaller than 1000, we want the container to be 85% of the screen. And we're just gonna have a look at that quickly, and that's looking a lot better. I think that's it for the common stylings. Now we're gonna go to the login page, and here we'll just put login and end login. And the only thing I can think of here is just the login card. We'll do login card and set that to width 100. And I think we can also do the same thing for register card. So we'll separate them by a comma, register.card, and that should do that. We'll just add login and register here. And then we'll do the wall, which is the index. And here we will set the wall container to padding 20 pixels. And within that we have the new post, and we'll give that a margin of 20 pixels and 0. Within the new post we have a hint, which will set to color white, and a text shadow of 005 pixels black, and font size 14 pixels. And this is basically what we have in the wall. The hint right here, share something beneficial. You see the text shadow is black. That's basically this. And the text area will be width 100%, and the height will be 100 pixels, and the padding will be 10 pixels. In the border we set to 1 pixel, solid black but very transparent, and we will set the resize to none, so you can't resize the text area, and the background color will just be transparent. The wall post will be positioned to relative, and the display will be flex, with the flex direction set to column, and then gap 1 EM, and the margin will be 2 EM 0. And I think that's it for that. Post info, I need to see the index again because I'm starting to forget. We've got post info, image name, post container, and DT. Okay, so post info, we want to do display. Whoops, wrong file. Display, flex, and then align item center. For the wall post .td or dt. I'm going to do position absolute, display flex, right 0, top 20 pixels, and align items center. Okay, so that's that. And then we want to do, what else do we want to do? I think that's it for the wall. Next up we have alert. So for alert, it's quite straightforward really. This is the main thing that we need to do. Alert, display flex, align items center, to align the text to the center vertically, and then the height of the whole thing will be 50 pixels, and the color of the text will be white, and the width will be 100%, and the justify content to center the text horizontally will be center. And the background will be set within the alert or the different files. What do we have next? I think we have the profile. So let's just open that up quickly, move it to here, close this. And then for profile, we'll just write a comment profile very quickly. Then we'll do .profile, display flex direction, row padding 20 pixels, gap 1 em, and we'll do profile info, which will be display flex direction, column again, and then align items center, and then .profile image or .profile info image, which will be a bigger image than usual, 200 by 200, and then .profile info .name, we do font size 1.5 em, and then profile text area will have a width of 100%, a height of 200 pixels, and the bio container will be a width of 60%, and that will be the end of the profile. Let's just have a look at this for a second. If I refresh this, that's looking good. If I resize that, that's looking good too. If I try to log in to test 2, and the wall is looking very good. If I go to profile, that is looking very good too. Friends, that's looking slightly okay, but we haven't fixed that yet. But it's all coming together. That's very good. So that's the bio or the profile done. For the friends, which is the last thing we need to do, I think, we've got a comment friends, and then here we'll do members container, friends container, display flex direction, row flex row or flex wrap, set it to wrap in gap 1 em, and align items to center. Let's just have a look at that quickly. If you go to friends, and you can see that's being aligned from left to right now. So carrying on, if we, now that we've set this up to be aligned from left to right, what do we want to do? Let's check the friends file. We go down here. Okay, so we need to set up the card H4, and we'll just do a margin bottom to give it a bit of spacing, and then we'll do We'll also do member container and friend container, and this will just have a text align center and a min width of 110 pixels. The action buttons or the action text, we want that to be a color of RGB 000, which is black, and then 0.3, so that it's very light. Margin top 10 pixels to give it space at the top, and then cursor pointer so that it looks like it can be clicked on. For the action A tag, we'll just do color inherit so that we don't see the default blue color, and then we'll do action hover so that when we click on the action, you'll see that the color changes from light to slightly more or less transparent, so it'll be darker, or one extra zero there, that's fine. And then lastly, I think we'll do silent to change it to font size 12, and just have a look at that very quickly. I think the silent is at the top here, or when I add a friend, if I click add a friend, it's this right here. So we'll do margin top 10 pixels so that it gets spaced a bit from the top, and then the color needs to be a bit lighter, so we'll do 000 for black, and then 0.5 for semi opacity. And as you can see, we've got remove a friend and add a friend at the bottom. We add a friend, that's working fine. Add another friend and add another friend. Now we're all friends at the bottom. As you can see, remove a friend, remove a friend, remove a friend, remove a friend, that's working fine. If I go to profile and try to update my bio, this is my new bio, and update my picture. Let's say I use this picture again and I update, you'll see that it updates the picture, but we're getting an issue here. So let's see if the picture actually updated. It didn't update, so there is an error with the update functionality. So let's have a look at that. In terms of the CSS, I think we're done, so we can close that for now. This we can close, and then this is what we want to look at. So the best way to see what's happening here is for us to check if the data was saved first of all, and as you can see, it was saved, it just wasn't uploaded. So we need to check what the issue is there. What I will do is I will firstly just do a var dump of the values before we save them, and then we'll also check the handle upload file. But first let's check this, and we'll do die as well. If I refresh this or run it again and just have a look at the database, and then update the file, save this file, update, and as you can see, it says image file type, image file type, image file type is undefined. So we're having issues within this folder here. Image file type is undefined, right? So this image file type is supposed to be defined at the top, so we've forgotten to define it here. So we'll just define it right here. Image file type equals to string to lower, and that will be the path info, which gives us a string which returns information about a file path, and the file path that we want to return information of is a target file which we created, and then the path info extension. Path info extension, there we go. So doing that should fix the error. So let's just remove this and then open the profile again, try to link the image and update, and this time you could see that everything is working as expected. Update the bio number 2, update, and there we go. That's saved. If I refresh, still see the bio. That's working perfect. This is not working how we expected it to work. This should be right here at the bottom or at the top right. Instead it's showing in the middle of the screen, so I guess there is some issues with the CSS. And this will be, if I open up the nav bar, this is basically the avatar drop down, right? No, it's not. This is the mobile menu. No, it's not. It's the avatar drop down. So the avatar drop down, if we go to the CSS, look for avatar drop down right here. I think what it needs is a position absolute. So let's check, and that's looking better, but it's not quite right. So let's check what else we need to add here. Absolute, none. Let's do top 69 instead of 20. That's looking a lot better already. And then right is 20, that's fine. The rest is all looking good, so I think that's all we needed to do really. And as you can see, that's working. We can log out, looking good. We can register, we can log in, try to log in, test 2, submit, and we're logged in. We've got the posts here. We're going to create our own post. Hi y'all, how y'all doing? Post it, added post successfully. Hi y'all, how y'all doing? It's at the top of the list as we wanted, and I'm seeing that there's no space between the image and the text here. So I'm going to go to index, look at the image and the text, which is right here. And it's under post info. So if I go to post info, there should be some sort of gap here. Can I add a gap of 0.5 EM? And as you can see, we've got a gap now. That's looking better. But that's basically it. I think we've covered everything we need to cover. And this is a minimal social network website, like I said. If you click at the top left, it will take you to the home page. This to the profile, back to the home page, to the wall, which is the home page. And then you've got the friends page where you can add friends, remove them. And there you go. That's a full-blown project where we've utilized everything we've learned, from HTML to CSS to some JavaScript. And we've also used a lot of PHP and MySQL to persist the data. So if you've gotten this far with me, congratulations, you've made it to the end of the series. And I'm quite proud of you, to be very honest, because it's not easy to go through all of that. And whether it's taken you a couple of days, a few days, or a few weeks, it doesn't matter, as long as you've gotten to the end and you've stuck to it. Now you could take these skills and you can pretty much develop anything you'd like to develop. I mean, the sky's the limit. The only thing that can really limit you is your imagination, but you have the skill to create whatever it is you like to create. So if you've benefited from the series and if you've learned from the series, then make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because I'm going to be creating a lot more tutorials in the next couple of weeks, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you've got any questions, any sort of help that you'd like, just leave a comment, reach out, and I'll do my best to help you. If you have a request for a specific tutorial or language that you want me to cover, then I could also look into that for you. Just make sure you leave a comment and I'll get back to you. But yeah, man, thank you for watching and take care.